to Exotic Islands. Thank you for coming. Want to get away from it all? Want to immerse yourself in tropical paradise? Then let's fall into the sun and check out a load of gorgeous sun-baked islands around the world in 3 different oceans. They're located in the Pacific, Indian, and Atlantic Oceans, and all have unique histories and natural wonders to explore. We will dive into many islands around the world noted for their history, wildlife, culture, unique settings, and mystique. We will learn that islands have different kinds of uses, like man-made uses, and there are tens of thousands of islands around the world. Of course, we will not be talking about Gilligan's Island here, or we'll be talking about Coney Island or Castaway Island, nor will we talk about Islands in the Stream by Hemingway, Fantasy Island, The Island of Dr. Moreau, or my favorite though, Laid Back Island. All right, so let's start. We will start with the massive and expansive Pacific Ocean. Hawaii is an emerald string of 8 volcanic islands in the North Pacific Ocean. Polynesian seafarers around 500 AD came to this island, domino-like archipelago, traversing 1,500 miles across the Pacific. Captain Kirk became the first European to discover to the outside world in the 1770s. The big island of Hawaii, right here, is 2 times the size of all the Hawaiian islands. And we will discuss today Hawaii, Maui, and Oahu. And these are what they look like, and it changed. Kilauea is a large volcano there that has been continuously erupting since 1983 and has created 500 acres of new land. And this is a Hawaii waterfall. It's 1,450 feet tall in the Big Island of Hawaii, one of the largest in the world. There are 18 state parks on the Big Island with primeval forests that are 5 million years old, secluded bays, inlets, and 266 miles of coastline with over 60 beaches. Its warm, clear waters are also home to humpback whales, 9,000 pilot whales, 40 species of sharks, octopus, dolphins, turtles, stingrays, eels, 680 species of fish, and is a magnet for life. The turquoise waters shelter thousands of unique species found nowhere else on Earth. The island of Maui, which is just west of Hawaii, the Big Island, has and boasts 80 beaches, some with black, red, or green dark sand, rainforests, and is even the #1 destination for weddings. Take a stroll on the Hawaii Black Sand Beach and visit over 24 waterfalls. Visit the Nakalele blowhole right here. You can take helicopter rides, visit a lavender farm on Maui. You can see a coffee farm, snorkel, go kayaking, and see scenes like this with this color sand beach, and see even this kind of wildlife. You hike in rainforest and visit scenes like this. And there's Mount Kea. Mount Kea, a dormant volcano, which is over 13,800 feet tall, with snow on top. And this is on Maui. This just made the news. This is the Stairway to Heaven on Oahu. And it's 5,000 stairs that you can climb. It's really off limits to people, but they just closed it up to people. But I thought it was an interesting way of making an adventure on the island itself. And off the coast of Oahu is a tiny coral island called Tern Island. It was a naval airstrip used in World War II and has now since been abandoned. It's home to 16 species of seabirds. In total, 10,000 birds live, nest, and flock here. Many of these isolated, remote islands are much needed egg-laying, breeding, and resting areas for birds and sea turtles. And these are the Cook Islands. We're gonna move now to the Cook Islands. They are located in between Hawaii and North New Zealand, the Cook Islands here. They are 15 islands located in the South Pacific, and it is the same time zone as Hawaii. They were first settled around 1000 AD by Polynesian people. In the 1770s, British navigator James Cook explored it and became part of the British Empire. In total, it is 93 square miles and is 2,000 miles northeast of New Zealand. The islands were formed by volcanic activity, some with sunken volcanoes, with ancient coral reefs grown on top over thousands of years to make islands. It became a popular spot 150 years ago for whaling ships and now boasts a population of 65,000 people with 165,000 tourists a year. And they are located, Cook Islands has two sections, a northern group and a southern group. Again, they are located in here, east of Fiji, north of New Zealand, and look like this. No building can be taller than a coconut tree, and real estate is passed down through generations with no home selling or buying done. It's an untouched, pristine paradise with a moderate tourist industry compared to 10 million people that tourists that come to Hawaii. With the Cook Islands, you can take lagoon cruises, snorkel, take jeep drives into the wilderness and jungle areas, take speedboats, go paddle boarding. You can watch ethnic dancers, go fishing, and or play around on the boat. Take charter boats. And there's plenty to do there. And this is another kind of island. This is a different kind of island called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is a floating man-made island of plastic garbage in the North Pacific and is between Japan and the United States. Right here, the gyre, which is the way ocean currents move, and that's why it's collected in this area like this. It's a vortex of 2 trillion man-made marine debris particles and weighs 100,000 tons. Plastic pollution ends up on shores of very far away islands that litter their beaches and chokes already endangered marine life like sharks, seabirds, whales, and sea turtles. It's an environmental nightmare due to our obsessive throwaway disposable cultural products. And it's located up here. By the way, there are other gyres of this plastic patch, gyres meaning these giant circular forms of water in the South Pacific, in the North Atlantic, South Atlantic, and in the Indian Ocean. And so this floating debris over time aggregates into small, tiny micro bits of plastic, which is windblown worldwide and is now found on high mountain tops, inside all fish, marine mammals, and even pets, and even us. So how does this affect islands? Well, on Henderson Island down, I apologize for this. On Henderson Island right here in the Pacific, it's a remote island. It had 38 million pieces of plastic debris on its pristine shores and looks like this. This floating debris over time degrades into small particles as we talked about. So this comes up on these kind of islands. It floats up on their beaches, especially the remote ones. Now we're going to move on to Vanuatu. It's an island country in the South Pacific, and Vanuatu is again north of New Zealand, east of Australia, just south of the Solomon Islands, and has this kind of population. And the capital is Port Phillip. Vanuatu consists of really 13 principal islands and 70 smaller islands in an archipelago 500 miles west of Fiji and 1,100 miles west of Australia. It receives 100,000 tourists a year and has become a playground for those who can afford the journey. One can take wildlife tours, visit places like this in Vanuatu. And again, it's located here, and it looks like this. And you can kayak, take speedboats, scuba, snorkel, parasail, windsurf. There's these kind of volcanic mountains there. and has become this kind of playground for active people. So today, we're talking about the South Pacific. We just talked about Vanuatu here. We'll be talking about Fiji, here the Solomon Islands again, and we'll be talking about the Marshall Islands in this lecture, as well as French Polynesia, which will come up next in the South Pacific, an area called Oceania, which is where all these thousands of islands exist. French Polynesia is an overseas collectivity of France and its sole overseas country. It consists of 5 archipelagos in the South Central Pacific Ocean, and they include the Society Islands that look like this, and in the Society Islands we'll be talking about Tahiti and its capital Papeete, and the Tuvalu Islands and the Marquesas Islands here. They also have the Gambier Islands and Austral Islands. Together, they in all comprise 130 volcanic islands, atolls, and islets stretching 1,200 miles with a total of 1,600 square miles of land. Just over 250,000 inhabitants reside in Polynesia, really for the tourists who live there. And an island called Bora Bora is in this island chain, and it looks like this. Actually, many of these are atolls. That means there's a volcano in there that once was there or are there, and this is the surrounding area and a coral atolls have grown around it, which makes it very easy to work with in terms of staying there because it keeps out the rough waters. And we're talking about the Society Islands right now in the French Polynesia. And we'll take a look at more Society Island pictures. All very inviting. And it looks like this, again, this atoll situation with the sunken volcano. So, in the Society Islands, it has Tahiti in it. Again, these are the archipelagos, the Marquesas Islands and this. And we'll be talking right now about Tahiti, its capital, Papeete, right there. And Tahiti is the largest Polynesian island located in the Society Islands and is home to the area's capital. The capital is the administrative, industrial, commercial, and financial center of this island. Tahiti is divided into 2 parts, the bigger one, the northeast one, and a smaller one, the southeast one. Many consider this area paradise because of its lush, warm, green, remote tropical appeal. And the tourist industry blooms in Tahiti. You can take, there's 3 large volcanoes there. And there's jeep tours that you can take, playing with manta rays, of course on the beach always, and taking a surfing school there you can also go to. It has fishing boat tours, hiking tours, and the famous and easygoing Polynesian lifestyle that we've all heard about. And this is again what Tahiti looks like. Oh, I'd like to join them for dinner, let me tell you. And again, it looks like this. For history buffs, in 1787, the HMS Bounty, shown here, was on a botanical mission to Tahiti to obtain 1,000 breadfruit plants, which are a fig-type tree, and transport them to the West Indies for rations for the slaves working on sugar plantations. However, after the ship was 1,000 miles from Tahiti itself, the infamous mutiny on the Bounty occurred. And 25 mutineers hijacked the Bounty and sent its notorious Captain Bligh and his loyal sailors adrift on a small boat. The mutineers then sailed the Bounty and hid out on the remote and hard to find South Pitcairn Island, as shown here. This is very hard to find. And the Bounty then was burned in its harbor. And the mutineers stayed there until 1808, and only one was left by around that time period. Now we're going to move on to the Marshall Islands, which is in Oceania. Marshall Islands, right up here, and we'll be talking about them. And we're talking about the Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. This is very famous. It's an isolated and sparsely populated low-lying Pacific island country, the Marshall Islands, with 29 low coral atolls, 5 islands, and 70 square miles of land in total. Bikini Atoll, that we mentioned here, is in the Marshall Islands. In 1946, residents were evacuated and 23 nuclear tests were performed by the US until 1956. So we tested our bombs here. Numerous small islands, atolls, and miles of coral reef were vaporized during this above and below sea level testing. To this day, residents have 7 times the incident rate of tumors and cancerous problems compared to other countries. So they've had all these problems with radiation problems and sickness over time. You can't really eat the fish from the area, but the life has bounded back in the area. And there's on one small Marshall Island, there's a huge concrete dome that was erected to permanently encase radioactive waste from testing. It's called the Rennet Dome, or tomb. It's 377 feet in diameter and 18 inches thick. So they put the debris from the explosions that were made from the very radioactive material, and they encased it in concrete. And that's what this looks like here. Just want to tell you that islands have these different uses that people don't know about. And then there's Fiji, a country in an archipelago in the South Pacific Ocean, which is right here, not southeast of Vanuatu. And it's about 1,300 miles north of New Zealand. It's a small section of Melanesia, west of Polynesia. Melanesia is like Oceania. This then consists of 330 small islands spread out over 1 million square miles of ocean. Suva is Fiji's capital. Everyone considers Fiji to have a special allure due to its paradise-like climate while being surrounded by thousands of miles of vast ocean expanses. In Fiji, one can do many things. Again, it's a playground type island, and you can go kayaking, go parasailing, take these kind of inner tube tours in rivers, and be on white sand beaches. And you can also go into the Sabeto hot springs or mud pools. And I thought this was interesting because there's a little geothermal activity underneath the island, and there's the blood baths that you can take there. I thought that was interesting about Fiji. And now we're going to jump over and spend some time on the Galapagos Islands, which are 600 miles west of Ecuador, right here at the equator in the Pacific Ocean. And it consists of 19 islands, 13 large and 6 small ones, and is a chain of volcanic islands or an archipelago. 3 tectonic plates meet here, and there are volcanoes that are considered to be active. In total, these islands lie in 17,000 square miles of eastern Pacific waters at the equator. This island chain is noted for its unique and unusual animal life, like birds, reptiles, and tortoises that took on specific physical adaptations suited to its extreme long-term isolation from continental South America. So they have all these unique animals on it because it's been isolated for so long. So unique life forms come about, and we'll be getting into them that look like this. This place is a naturalist's dream, and one can see exotic flora and fauna, like giant tortoises, or seals, penguins, and iguanas. You can see giant cacti, finches, flightless cormorants. These tortoises live up to 100 years old. There are 2,900 species of marine animals that live on its shore, like crabs and sea lions, and these are marine iguanas. And what's special about them is they hatch in the sand, not too far from the beach. And when they hatch, they have to come out and then race to the water because they live near the water. So as they hatch out, these racers, what they call racer snakes, come out, and they go as fast as you could run, the snakes, and they chase them and they get them and they kill them. So being a marine iguana is not a good thing to be, but that's how life works on the Galapagos Islands. They have different kinds of birds here, seals. But I thought I'd show you the wildlife. And the most popular activity to do on these islands, on the Galapagos, is to take beach and inland treks on these islands with a guide or naturalist to fully comprehend a one-of-a-kind ecosystem. You can also snorkel, scuba dive, take small boat excursions and kayak, and see these unique wildlife and landforms, the goofy. And you can stay in a small, modest, simple tent. But most people stay on the island. They have small accommodations there, which are rather primitive. But most people take cruise ships and then take day trips into the island so they can see things like this. Let's play on the beaches there. And you can see these cacti there. And what's going on is, about 165 years ago, Charles Darwin discovered that bird finches there, living there, had developed specialized beaks that differ from other finches. They developed different beaks. And they developed these beaks to obtain specialized foods to adapt to their own local environment they exist in. Some beaks were good for eating insects, some for eating seeds, some for eating fruit. So different ones had different beaks, and he was able to notice this and take the time to figure it out. This discovery led in part to his revolutionary theory of evolution, as he studied and witnessed events only endemic to this specific island group. So the Galapagos is a true living laboratory, and you can find out, if you go there, you can see his research station there. And here's some silly cartoons. Desert island or deserted island, I'm not sure. Okay, so we're going to move on to Easter Island in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Actually, it's right over here, away from Chile. And it's 2,200 miles west of Chile and is the easternmost part of the Polynesian islands. Its original inhabitants were called the Rapi Nui, right here. And when the first Europeans arrived on Easter Day in 1722, it became known as this island, Easter Island. It was formed by volcanoes, and it's a small hilly island, and is 14 miles long by 7 miles wide, and is 62 square miles big, and it's the most remote island in the world. The island is famous for its 900 stone megalith statues called Maui, which were built by its original inhabitants between 1250 and 1500 AD. The heads of these old stones are unusually large, with broad, elongated noses, rectangular oblong ears, strong chins, heavy brows, truncated necks, and deep eye slits. The torsos of these figures have now over time been buried underground. They were carved from volcanic rock called tuff and weigh an average of 2,500 pounds each. The average height is 13 feet. They all face inland from the sea and were erected as symbols of political or religious power and authority. They serve to protect its inhabitants and to overlook the village. And they serve as the living faces of deified ancestors, maybe powerful chiefs back then. Hundreds of years ago, these large stones were quarried by the natives on the island and moved by logs that rolled them under these massive stones. The ropes with about 150 men, the rods were laboriously moved and then sculpted in place with hard rocks by hand. Due to these large-scale constructions, the island's resources were taxed with elaborate wood-made transport systems, necessary firewood, erected wooden hut structures, and used for a population of 15,000 on the island. Its small ecosystem was stressed and tested. The original inhabitants needed food, shelter, and clothing, thus the island over time was deforested. The trees and native animals like birds and wild game were hunted near extinction, leading its primitive culture to be decimated by starvation and later tribal warfare. In other words, they used so many natural resources on the island, they dominated it and then made it, a lot of the species go either extinct or end up leaving the island because there's no other mates for these animals. This therefore severely depopulated its native human population over time, and even a smallpox epidemic decimated even more inhabitants. So they created their own nightmare by having an area that was too small to live in. And I thought it was funny, it kind of looks like a star here. So, but the same thing happened with the Mayans about 1,200 years ago. They erected these giant temples and had vast cities like this. And to make these kind of temples, they quarried limestone. Fine. But in order to keep the blocks together, they needed mortar. So you have to burn limestone blocks with wood. So they would collect, just to make enough cement to make like the size of your table here, maybe about a square meter. They would take 200 trees to do that. And they would take then they would take down tens of thousands of trees, really over a number of years, with their stone axes to be able to make the cement to put this together. Well, when you take down the trees in a rainforest, it takes away the moisture coming down. That means it doesn't rain as much, and they end up having a drought, which is why the Mayans couldn't live there anymore and went elsewhere. So that's why they abandoned their cities. And it's not a big mystery. When you screw up your environment, you're gonna have to move elsewhere. It's not gonna come back for a long time. Okay, we can move on to Fraser Island, which is the largest island in southeastern coast off Queensland, Australia. And here's Fraser Island, and it's off Australia here. And it's the largest sand island in the world with 27 cubic miles of sand and is 710 square miles big. 400,000 tourists visit this by ferry every year. The Australians consider this a play island. So they go there, and it's play island because you can take your car and go up and down the sand dunes if you want. Just make sure it's four-wheel drive or you're gonna get stuck. So you can see shipwrecks like this, go to eucalyptus forests like this in Fraser Island. It's a very popular spot. Again, go on the beaches and visit these kind of shorelines that go on forever. Very exciting. They have on Fraser Island, they have a creek called Eli Creek it dumps 1 million gallons of fresh water every hour into the Pacific Ocean. So I wanted to show you this about this kind of play island right here. Again, Fraser Island, just right next to Australia. Actually, it contains rainforest, 100 freshwater lakes, 350 different kinds of birds, and mangrove forests. And we're going to stay with Australia and visit now the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia. And you can see from space it goes 1,400 miles over here. And I'm putting this in on purpose because it's the largest living organism in the world because it's made out of live coral. It's a vast sanctuary and protective area for an astonishing array of undersea life. 1/2 of all the coral in the Great Barrier Reef now has been bleached and is dead due to the warm waters of climate-changing Earth. Nature takes thousands of years to build these reefs. Now they are severely threatened by our activities. We will talk more about this when we talk about the Maldives, but this is one of nature's fantastic works that is slowly being actually broken up and disappearing. This is another island. Some islands serve as strategic naval importance to countries like Iwo Jima, which is a volcanic island 650 miles south of Tokyo. Here it is. And it was the site of the famous World War II battle fought in February-March of 1945. Japanese and Allied forces lost 20,000 men each. So some islands, again, have different specific needs, like being strategically important when it comes to defending or supplying your country. In today's world, China considers islands so important to its national security they've created man-made sand islands for military use. They are constructed on top of submerged coral atolls in the South China Sea in the Pacific around the Spratly Islands. This makes the news. If you listen to the news, this is what China's doing. It's pumping millions of tons of sand to make naval bases, airstrips, and naval facilities here so they can have more land. They can assert their dominance this way. This is causing problems around the world. And or you could have a house like this on an island like this. That sounds interesting. And now we're going to jump to Vancouver Island, or Victoria Island, is located on the northeast Pacific Ocean and is part of the Canadian province called British Columbia. And here it is. It's a very large island. It's 12,000 square miles and bigger than Great Britain. Its population is 870,000. And you can do many things on the island because it was, you can go skiing there. It has these tall mountains, 7,000-foot mountain ranges, and the 2010 Winter Olympics were held in the snowy mountainous region. So there's many different kinds of environments on this island alone. This is one. And you can go on whale watches there when you go to this island, see orcas, go on hiking trails and see petroglyphs, which are drawings by native people of that area. You can go to, it's Port City here, Vancouver. You can also go on these coastal trails and go on these long hikes on the Pacific Rim National Park. You can see native totem poles. Go on black bear and grizzly bear watches. You can take tours of that. And you go on these very long trails here, like the Cathedral Grove Trail. And you can really take a walk on the wild side going in Vancouver. So there's many different environments here, which is why I like it. From way on top to semi-tropical rainforests. And we're going to now jump to the Indian Ocean. And Sri Lanka, which is formerly Ceylon, is an island nation 20 miles south of India, right here. And it's in the warm and balmy Indian Ocean. There are 24 million people living here, most in the capital named Colombo, which is right here. It's a 25,000 square island with 3 languages and 4 religions, mainly Buddhist. It boasts tropical climate, being only 500 miles north of the equator, and has many, many religious festivals. Take a tour of Sigiriya and climb up an ancient stone fortress and citadel 660 feet tall. This is what tourists do, they come and climb this. These are kind of things to do in Sri Lanka. You can see Buddhist temples here. There are 8 of them. There's 8 different ones. You can eat exotic food. This is what it looks like, a teardrop-shaped island off India. And you can go to elephant orphanages because there's 7,500 elephants on this island. So you can go to elephant orphanages here, see them how they move trunks. You can visit school children here and see them do work. I was fascinated by the elephants in this because it's so unique. Again, you can see these kind of temples here. You can visit waterfalls. There are more than 100 waterfalls and rivers to explore. You can visit tea factories, take guided whale watching tours, see elephants bathe in an orphanage, take a jungle safari, see leopards, crocodiles, monitor lizards, take a whale and dolphin watching tour, ride a hot air balloon, jet ski, parasail, yachting, speedboats, canoeing, kayaking, and even boating in the mangrove forest. And you can see these kind of waterfalls with these elephants naturally doing things, or take rafts if you would like. Many activities to do here, which is why it draws a lot of tourists. And you can ride on an elephant. I would imagine that would be an experience you would tell people about that for many, many years, doing things like this and seeing sites like this. You can see one of 16 national parks, sanctuaries, and natural reserves. And you can have this kind of cuisine, see this. And just this summer, there was a big freighter caught fire near Sri Lanka, just off coast, and had to be hosed down here, and it spilled nitric acid, thousands of gallons of it. And this turned into white pellets that landed on Sri Lanka beaches, and here they are cleaning up this environmental mess. So islands again take the brunt of being near environmental problems like oil spills, plastic problems, and other situations which we'll get into. This is another island. I thought this is off Cancun and Cozumel. This is called Island of the Dolls, where natives have placed all kinds of dolls around like this. To me, this is really creepy, and I guess it's this up here, because it looks like this. I'm sure most of you would want to avoid that island. So again, different uses. And now we're going to jump in the Indian Ocean still. We're going to jump to Maldives. And it's a nation of islands that spans across the equator. And it's comprised of 1,100 islands and stretched for more than 500 miles. It's southwest off India and Sri Lanka. Here it is. Now here was Sri Lanka. So Mali is right here, and has all these small islands like this. And the capital is Mali of the Maldives. That's what we're talking about today, Maldives. And again, it looks like these atolls right here. These kind of atolls, very small little islands. Actually, 99% water and 1% islands. And again, it's off India. Here. And about 2 million tourists flock to the Maldives every year, and is a popular spot for honeymooners. One can purchase toll transfers that allow vacationers to island hop by different ferries, speedboats, seaplanes, private boats, and domestic aircraft. Many people here come to scuba, and it's actually the #1 destination for scuba diving on Earth. You can visit mosques, go to exotic fish markets, skydive, and dolphin watch. Glass bottom boats are popular for viewing and the colorful marine life. And these are kind of, if you were to go there, these would be kind of the tourist places that you would live in a centralized ring. And Mali is its capital, and what's going on there is it's so densely populated that 250,000 people live on 3 square miles of island, and looks like this. This is the most congested island almost in the world. This land is very, very sought after. And again, you'd be staying on places like this. Now, it's also, the Maldives is one of the indicators of sea change right now in global warming. And it's one of the world's lowest lying countries. It averages just 5 feet above sea level. Its lowness means it's susceptible to devastating tsunamis, like the 2004 tsunami, which severely damaged our island, and now is ground zero for dramatic, slow but sure sea level rising due to climate change. Warmer oceans mean higher sea levels, and a rising ocean will put vulnerable islands underwater, as many scientists expect to lose the Maldives by the end of the century. But also, because of the warming and the acidic waters, it has taken the coral around the Maldives that people come to see through glass bottom boats or scuba dive, whatever, and bleached it and turned it into this. That means the algae has gone from the coral, and it looks like this, which isn't very exciting at all, and it does not attract fish, which is what's all going on. So before in the Maldives, it would look like this. Some of it has looked like this, all broken up and broken, and it looks like this, up before and then after. This is on us. What's going on. The sea is changing, and we're losing these things just like in the Great Barrier Reef. So, warming is starting to kill that area. Now we're going to jump over to staying in the Indian Ocean. Madagascar is the 2nd largest island in the in the world, and is located 250 miles east off the coast of East Africa. So this is, Madagascar. It's a very big island off this, and actually broke off Africa with continental drift, and was part of it, but just broke off. Here's an interesting optical illusion. Isn't that interesting? But Its capital is something I can't pronounce. But what's known for it is it's really 230,000 square miles and south of the equator. And this island is a biodiversity hotspot due to its isolation from Africa for millions of years. It boasts over 14,000 plant species, of which 80% are found nowhere else in the world. It is called the Noah's Ark of the world with its unique ecosystems. There are 300 species of birds, 103 species of lemurs, different kinds, and over 100,000 species of insects live there. Sadly, 90% of its forests in Madagascar have been cut down. Settlers have used slash and burn situations to plant crops in or to make palm oil plantations. This makes many of its animal inhabitants appear on the endangered species list. However, there are very wonderful things to see in Madagascar besides the animals and flora and fauna. This is called the Tingsy Stone Forest in Madagascar. It's a spectacular canyon of 150-foot jagged steeple pinnacles of limestone rock formations, and they've been all eroded away and look like big spires on a church. And ring-tailed monkeys actually jump on these to get down to lower below and look for food. But this is what this looks like. This is a natural wonder not too many people know about. And on Madagascar, you can visit the Avenue of the Baobabs. These are baobab trees that store water in them. Actually, they have trunks that are up to 20 to 25 feet thick, and they're very unusual. But I would like to walk on this, let me tell you. And there are caves and sinkholes to visit with fossils to find. And this is the Andringida waterfall. It's 750 feet tall that you could visit. There's a natural wonder. There are cave systems below that run for 11 miles below, about over 700 feet underground. Actually, this is 950 feet above sea level. I've read the long note on this. I thought that was very nice to see. And if you're tired of paying real estate taxes, you can always live in this kind of island if you'd like to. Now we're going to jump to another unique island, and this is called, in the immense island chain called Indonesia, which exists all through here. And it spans both the Pacific and Indian Ocean, and the island of Flores is located in this Indonesia archipelago. And there's a cave there that they found, and in the cave, anthropologists have uncovered species of a small, archaic, early ancestor of us, nicknamed forest man or hobbit, that lived there between 60 to 100,000 years ago in caves and are only endemic to this island. These early humans were only 3.5 feet tall compared to us. They weighed 55 pounds, had 1/3 the brain size we do, about as large as a grapefruit, and had large teeth and large feet. They used stone tools, and this is the, for instance, this is the fossilized remains that they found. It looked like this, were small like this, but also they had these small elephants on the island called stegodons right here. And these dwarf-like people live with these dwarf-like elephants. But paradoxically, the remains of the 6-foot-tall stork that lived over there. But this is their skull compared to our skull. They lived in huts like this. And these people and ancient small elephants evolved this way because of a genetic disorder called dwarfism. This evolutionary process results from living in long-term isolation on a small island with limited food resources, lack of iodine, and lack of predators. So these pine-sized humans may have been related to Homo erectus, a human species that died out tens of thousands of years ago before Homo sapiens or us came around. Flores man height, size, and weight progressively diminished over dozens of generations as their supply decreased over thousands of years. So islands not only isolate these kind of populations, but make them a bit different in terms of animals and even us. And that's why I wanted to show you. That's why islands are important. And there's another play island. This is called Phuket, and it's the largest play island in off the coast of Thailand right here. And it's located in the Andaman Sea and the Indian Ocean. It's really in southern Thailand. It's 210 square miles, 70% being mountains running north and south on its interior. Rubber and palm oil plantations take up the interior space. There are 32 smaller islands off its coast. 600,000 people live on Phuket, but its proximity to the equator and white sand beaches with plenty of urban amenities make it a favorite playground for rich Chinese tourists. 10 million visitors come here once a year, every year. There are 43 beaches. This is really Disneyland for Asians. So we have Disneyland, well, they have Phuket. There's another play island, by the way, and this is called Jeju Island, and this is off the coast of South Korea, right here, an island. And it attracts loads of Asian tourists. It's 90 miles south of South Korea in the warm Korean Straits, right here. And it's considered the Hawaii of South Korea. 15 million tourists per year come to visit the 705 square mile island. It boasts a 6,400 extinct volcano called Lassen, and a centerpiece, and there are waterfalls there to visit. These lava tubes that you can take tours of. There's 5 miles of lava tubes there. I thought that was kind of interesting underneath this. So what you do is when you go there, you can play on these islands here on the beaches and take tours of this area here. And this is what it looks like going there to get to there. Jeju Island. And again, it looks like this. Play here, and see something like this. I thought that's spectacular to look at. And you can also watch older women dive 95 feet underwater without oxygen masks to collect shellfish and walk miles on its fabulous beaches. It's really meant for Asian families to play on again. And you can have also homes like this. I thought I intersperse these things in because you can live like this, like this, like this. I often wondered, how do you get up this? But anyways, now we're going to jump to the Caribbean Ocean in the Atlantic here. And the Caribbean is a massive archipelago in the mid-Atlantic Ocean, divided into the Greater Antilles up here, and then the Lesser Antilles down here. And there's also the ABC Islands and the West Indies, and make up these island chain. More than 700 islands and reefs make up this vast crescent-like chain of islands to hop to. So the largest one, of course, is Cuba, and then you have the Hispaniola, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and but we'll be talking about some other islands down here, which is Jamaica. We're going to be covered most considered Barbados and the Grand Cayman Islands being the most beautiful ones. And the Cayman Islands are here, south of Cuba, and Barbados is here in the Lesser Antilles, way to the south, not too far from Venezuela. And Barbados is the most eastern island in the Lesser Antilles. It boasts white sand beaches, less tourists and congestion, and underwater reefs, and looks like this. This is very beautiful and more isolated than the touristy type islands. The Cayman Islands has a 7-mile beach, the most photographed one in the world, and has Stingray City where you can play with stingrays, and is located here in the Cayman Islands. And it boasts caves, underground shipwrecks, rock formations, and caves to explore. Now we're going to jump to still staying in the Atlantic Ocean, we're going to jump to the Cape Verde Islands, which is just west of Senegal, about 350 miles off the western coast of Africa. It consists of 10 volcanic islands, these 10 here, and about 1,500 square miles of land. And many people like to visit here because of it being near the equator off Africa. Looks like time to explore how it looks like, so you know what's going on. Like this. And you can also, it's famous for its tropical climate, West African music, and volcanic islands. You can hike up Mount Fogo, which is a volcanic island made of cinder, little pieces of cinder. You can go up it and have an awful lot of fun going down. So I wanted to show you about Cape Verde Islands. And now we're going to jump, still staying in the Atlantic and in the Mediterranean in Europe. We're going to jump to Sicily, which is an island just south of Italy in the warm Mediterranean Sea. It's 10,000 square miles big. Its capital is Palermo, and you can visit. It has a population of 5 million, and Mount Etna on this island is Europe's highest active volcano. It's at 11,000 feet, and it's still erupting now and then. Sicily has many of these iconic kind of villages to go to, and it's famous for its 7 still standing world famous Greek temples built between 400 and 500 BC to see on Sicily. When the Romans came here, the Romans and Greeks came here, they built these kind of temples. Here's another shot of them. You can see visit the Roman amphitheater built in 200 AD. You can visit the Palermo, its capital, see ruins, and take in these beautiful little villages and cities they have there. It has 3 volcanoes. Visit beaches, small towns, and enjoy the warmth of sun-drenched Mediterranean lifestyle. And now we're going to jump to being in the Mediterranean. We're going to jump to the islands of Greece here. Grecian islands, and they are in the Ionian and Aegean Sea. They have about 200 islands there, the largest one being Crete, but they're broken up into 5 different clusters: Sporades Islands, the Ionian Islands, Saronic Islands, Pleiades Islands, and Doganese Islands. Many of the tourists, when you go to Greece and take a boat tour, you'll end up going to Mykonos, and Milos, and Santorini. These are the popular ones to go to when you leave on a cruise ship, for instance. So I wanted to show you some of the capitals here of Greece. What this looks like. Sure looks inviting, doesn't it? This is Santorini with its blue dome churches nestled in warm blue waters of the Mediterranean, with pristine beaches, spectacular sunsets, and warm temperatures. These are the kind of things that makes the Greek Isles so popular to visit. Milos in Greece. And more of the Greek islands with these iconic kind of churches. And this is Mykonos.
We saw those.
It looks like this. Like this. And now we're going to switch gears here and talk about some islands that are for man-made uses. As I mentioned before, islands have different kinds of uses. Some are very mysterious and have been used to isolate, dehumanize, and punish others. Australia was once known as New South Wales and was first used by the British to carry convicts in the late 1770s to Botany Bay. That means Britain would take its convicts and send them down to Australia. And about 160,000 convicts were sent for 90 years. Were sent by ships to dump unwanted social misfits there. And like thieves, murderers, whatever. Later, word got out that this southern continent was a good place to live, farm, and work, and the rest is history. So, Australia once served as a penal colony, really. And speaking of that, in the Mediterranean island of Elba, 86 square mile island, about 6 miles from Italy's northern mainland, right over here, is an island called Elba. And the French Emperor Napoleon was exiled this island in 1814. He later escaped 10 months later on. He bribed some people to get back. He was emperor then for about a couple months. Then they got rid of him again, and he was sent to a more permanent place at St. Helena Island, way off Africa. Later on, he died there because he was poisoned. You can visit his tomb in Paris, and he really was the maker of modern France. That's why he's important. But he was exiled to these islands because they didn't know how else to get rid of him. So, and speaking of things like this, Devil's Island off the coast of French Guiana is in the mid-Atlantic, was a notorious penal colony in the Salvation Islands, 9 miles offshore from the continent. This is where France sent all of her societal and political and hardened thieves and murderers from 1852 to 1953. Really, about 80,000 prisoners were sent here to this island. This island is important because we learned about it, though, with the film Papillon. And it's almost impossible to escape from because it's so difficult being there. But this is very harshly ruled back then and is a subject of dehumanizing events. Speaking of that, there's another island called Pete Island, which is 30 miles north of Sydney, Australia. It was a government facility to house hundreds of intellectually disabled men and boys in the early 20th century. 300 unexplained deaths occurred there from inmates over the decades due to mismanagement and lack of sympathy. So again, islands are used for this kind of purpose. There's another kind of island called Hashima Island in Japan, once housed coal miners and was built to withstand typhoons. It is now deserted and slowly crumbling away. And it kind of looks like this, like a ghost island, like this. I thought that was kind of interesting, like a movie set, isn't it? That you would expect on some kind of a strange, bizarre situation. And this is another kind of island called Spinalonga, or Island of Tears. This was once a leper colony from 1903 to 1957, and is now abandoned and deserted. Another kind of island, again to house prisoners, was Robben Island in South Africa. And it's 5 miles west of South Africa, here just off the coast here. And this is was once used to house mentally deranged people, lepers, and sick homeless people, and later as an infamous prison for Nelson Mandela, who stayed there about 20 years. He just mined rocks there all day long. His jail cell was 7 feet by 9 feet. And what made him interesting was he forgave his prisoners, the people who imprisoned them, he forgave them and decided to build a better South Africa. And for that he was elected leader and as a national hero and quite a man to reckon with. There's 2 other kinds of islands I wanted to show you. These are called Delta Islands. This is off the freshwater Danube River in Europe. Usually when you go on Danube River tour, they take you all the way to Budapest, but they never show you what's east of there, where it empties into the Black Sea, and this is the delta that it forms there. And here's a town that we'll be discussing here called, let's see if it's on here, right, called Valkyrie right here, Velko right here. We're discussing that town in a minute. So this is the area, marshland area, that has it is a brackish area, and it forms a 2,000 square mile delta with many islands. It is a specialized wetland estuary for 300 species of birds. And this town called Velko is in the vast Danube Delta marshland. It's really the Venice of the Balkans. Everything's built on stilts here. So it's like a mini Venice, but it's in a poor part, and they don't take you there because there's not that much to do there or spend your money. But it does exist. This is another delta island in Brazil, formed by the Amazon River. When it empties its load, it's able to make, with all the sediments it delivers, it makes an island called Marajo Island. This island is so big that it's the size of Switzerland. And it's just tremendous. Here's where the delta forms to go into the Atlantic Ocean from the Atlantic Ocean, and people farm animals on this ocean, they have timber, and it looks like this. I thought this was interesting because what happens when a river dumps all its sediment, it forms an island. And as they are walking right here, it's a floodplain that has been logged for decades and part of the Morocco archipelago. And it looks like this. I thought this was interesting. What happens at the end of all rivers? They form this. And it actually consists of 2,500 small islands or islets that over time has been made into these small islands or large islands. So I hope that you've enjoyed all these exotic islands I wanted to show you. And know that these are fascinating places to visit. And they have historical significance, great charm and allure, and above all, an appeal to ideas that take us away to a very special place. And thank you, that is the end of this lecture. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Now, all different kinds of islands. Does anybody have any kind of questions or comments that they would like to make? Or any experiences they've had? Yes, sir.
When you just showed recently that off the coast of Japan, the old coal mining island.
Sure.
There was a special on TV on one of the shows I watched, and you can't see it in your pictures, but they call it Battleship Island because when you look at it this way, it looks like a battleship.
Oh.
Well, that's kind of cool. So they have all these kind of islands, and imagine the pouring concrete on this. I just can't